Am I on? Now I'm on, right? Okay. So, let's take our Bibles and turn to Revelation chapter 12. And we're not going to read it, but I want to refocus your attention to verses 7 through 17 this morning. And then right before we get started, I'm going to ask Brother Henry, who is going to run away and leave us for a whole month, to open in prayer. Amen. All right, so we were looking at the war in heaven with the dragon and Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon, and we defined the dragon as being Satan. That one is easy. Michael and his angels, it's also pretty easy. We looked at words that are translated into heaven, and I think we did that last week. And so we concluded with the thought that we really have to look at the passage itself, using internal clues in Revelation 12 in order to determine where this war actually took place, okay? Remember, Paul spoke of being caught up to the third heaven. Well, if there's a third one, that means there's a second one and a first one. So which one is it, right? There's an interesting parallel between Revelation 12 verses 7 through 10 and Daniel 12 verses 1 through 3. And this is also very interesting because I didn't plan for this, but I'm actually preaching on Daniel 12 for the afternoon or for the morning service. We're going to be looking at this 2 times today. So I didn't plan that. You say, well, how could you not plan that? Well, I prepared the series on Daniel months and months ago, and I had no idea that we would be in this exact spot on the prophecy course at the same time. So all I can conclude is that maybe God wants us to really get this, okay? So let's really get this. Daniel 12, verses 1 through 3. I'm going to ask Ozzy, if he will, to read that.
Sure. Daniel 12, 1 through 3. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of the people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was, such since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever.
The context of Daniel's prophecy begins in Daniel chapter 10. And we find a very detailed description of what will befall the Jewish people in the end times. And it starts in chapter 10, it continues for 3 more chapters. And Daniel is describing a point in time where Michael will stand up for Israel, which is exactly what we read in Revelation chapter 12. So that's why I said these 2 passages are parallel in that. And so Israel, for them it's a time of trouble. This is what the Bible teaches us. It's a time of trouble. It's worse than anything they'd ever seen before. It's going to be followed by a resurrection, which Daniel describes, which if you look at Revelation 12:10, you can't really miss this, okay? Because Revelation 12:10, you have a loud voice that says, "Now is come salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ." So Daniel speaks of a time worse than Israel has ever seen before, And then Revelation 12, verse 17, it ends with this. It says, the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Now again, we're looking at Daniel or Revelation. Daniel, Revelation. These are two bookends to God's prophetic calendar, okay? You have to keep that in mind. These two books complement one another quite often. So Daniel 12, again, is connected to the earlier two chapters, which speaks of a time when the Antichrist brings in the abomination of desolation. Michael, the great prince who stands for Daniel's people, we're told in the book of Daniel, shall arise. That's interesting. I don't know that we've ever read anything about that happening historically before, but now suddenly it's in the book of Daniel and it's in the book of Revelation. So he stands to defend the people, and it appears to be happening at the midpoint of the tribulation. And all of it lines up very perfectly. The Antichrist sets himself to be worshipped as God. At the same time, Satan is cast down to the earth, no longer the prince of the power of the air, and fully possesses the Antichrist. Now this is my opinion on this. I think when Satan is cast out, that he fully possesses the Antichrist at that point. You're saying, well, I thought he was possessed in the very beginning of the tribulation. I don't know if he was fully possessed, but he's definitely under control. Understand that when we're talking about possession, there's more than just one bad spirit out there. You know, you've got the devil, who is obviously the man in charge of, his kingdom. And you have many other kinds of demons and devils. And, so maybe the Antichrist was possessed by a lesser devil or something of that nature. But at this point, it's my opinion that the Antichrist is possessed of the devil himself. And it's really bad. Revelation chapter 13, verses 3 through 5. And Henry, would you read that for me? So 40 and 2 months, he's given great power to blaspheme for 40 and 2 months. How long is 42 months?
3.5 years.
Yeah, 3.5 years. That keeps coming up again and again and again, doesn't it? Yeah, there's a reason for that. How does John describe the casting out of Satan? In Revelation chapter 12, verse 9, he says that the great dragon was cast out. That old serpent, called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world, is cast out to the earth, and his angels are cast out with him. So that's the description. And one of the reasons why people get confused with this passage and trying to figure out exactly when this passage is referring to is because whether you know it or not, or whether you realize it, let me say this, you probably know this, you just probably haven't thought of it in these terms, but there are actually 4 falls of Satan in the Bible. You've got the fall of, the fall of Satan before the fall of man. He was, in the garden to tempt Eve. Isaiah 14, Ezekiel chapter 28, where Satan is, cast out of heaven as a result of his pride. Then you have a second fall. In the midst of the tribulation, Satan's second fall is described where he is cast down to the earth. That's in the midst of the tribulation, in the middle point. Then you have it again, another fall at the beginning of the millennium. The third fall comes where Satan is bound and cast into the bottomless pit for 1,000 years. Revelation chapter 20, verses 1 through 3, if you're interested in looking at that. For the sake of time, we won't read it. And then the final judgment, his final fall, if you will, where Satan is cast into the lake of fire at the end of the millennium in Revelation chapter 20 and verse 10. And I do want somebody to read that one. Isaac, did you read? You haven't read yet, right? Can you read that? Revelation chapter 20 and verse 10, Why? Because I just want the devil to hear what's going to happen to him. That's why we're going to read that. So can you read that?
And the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever.
So Revelation chapter 12, verse 9 describes Satan's fall in that he will be cast out to the earth. And since we know that Satan already has access to the earth and has had access since the garden, then what in the world does this mean? We know that the war in heaven mentioned here in Revelation 12 happens at the midpoint of the tribulation period. According to Job chapter 1 verse 6 and Job chapter 2 verse 1, Satan not only has access to the earth, but in some sense, he currently has access to God. Job chapter 1 verse 6, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. Job chapter 2 verse 1, a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord. So remember that we're talking about two locations here, the earth and the heavens, or heaven, where, access to God, okay? This is getting cut off here. That's what we're seeing in Revelation chapter 12. This aspect is now closed to him. Revelation chapter 12, verse 10. Stephen, could you read that for me, sir?
And I heard a loud voice saying to heaven, now is come salvation and strength in the kingdom of our God, and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night.
A loud voice saying in heaven. Who's that loud voice? Now here's the thing. We never really actually thought about identifying that loud voice until I said, and who's that loud voice? You read it and you just assumed that that loud voice was maybe God or maybe Jesus or some angelic being. You just assumed that when you read it. It's not identified. The identity of the voice is difficult. Initially you want to say there's God, but the voice refers to the brethren as our brethren. So then it must be the voice of a man in order for people to be our brethren. And you might be tempted to presume maybe the voice is Christ, the God-man, right? But the problem with that is that he would be speaking of himself in third person. I suppose it's possible. It's just not very probable. But what is actually being said here? Because that's the point we're to get. There's a statement of praise because the accuser of the brethren has been cast down. Apparently, Satan is now losing his ability to accuse the brethren as he has done at least since the book of Job. He can no longer do that. The result of the accuser being cast down is given to us as fourfold: salvation. This doesn't mean that no one could be saved up to that point. It just speaks of the specific overthrow of Satan himself. One of our great enemies, one of our three great enemies, has now been overcome in that sense. Then you have strength, the power which will crush all opposition toward God. The kingdom of our God is mentioned here as a great event that all of creation is looked forward to with groaning and travail, according to Romans. It's just around the corner. And remember now, we are in Revelation chapter 12. So because we are in Revelation chapter 12, sometimes we think, well, we still got a long way to go before the end of the tribulation. But actually, if you remember what we were saying a few weeks ago, we are in the final moments of the game. All right? We are on the 10-yard line, and we have possession. The game is almost over, okay? So don't get the idea that just because we're in a parenthetical passage and God is kind of backed up in time that, don't be thinking in those terms. understand that these events are rapidly closing up on them, okay, in the future. Then it mentions the power of his Christ. Naturally, Christ already has all power. He said that all power is given unto me. Isn't that what he said? But this is speaking of the coming millennial kingdom in which Christ will sit upon the throne as the King of Kings. In this present time, Satan accuses the brethren before the Father. I hate that. I hate that because he's talking to God, so he obviously can't lie about me. So in order to accuse me, I have to give him something to say. I hate that I give him something to say. You know what I mean? I hate that I would give him anything. However, we still have hope. 1 John chapter 2, verses 1 and 2. And Brother Peter, would you read that? 1 John chapter 2, verses 1 and 2. Yes, sir.
My little children, these things write I unto you that is enough. If any man sin, we have an advocate with the Father, who is Jesus Christ the righteous. And he is the propitiation for our sins, not for ours only, but also for the sins of the whole world.
Jesus is the propitiation for our sins. He is our advocate. That's a very interesting word. You guys that like to use your little Greek pop-up things, did anybody bring your little Greek pop-up thing this morning? Yeah? You're going to like this word. I promise you, when you see this word, you're going to go, ooh, that's cool. What is it?
I was guessing.
What are you guessing?
Paraclete?
Well, I suppose you could be right, but we won't know until we know, right? What is it? Yes. What? Paraclete? Where have we heard that before? Have you, if you're one of those guys that you're really deep into Greek and stuff, you're going, that's not how it's said. You don't say paraclete. We're speaking English, okay? Get over it, all right? Paraclete. That's what everybody calls it. P-A-R-A-K-L-E-T-E, okay? That's the comforter that we read about in John chapter 14 and 15 and 16. You see the word there, right? Well, advocate here is translated from paraclete. Why? Well, because paraclete means one called alongside of as a comforter or as an advocate for you, okay? So it gives you a little, next time you're back in John chapter 14 and you're reading through there, you're going to go, wow, this is more than just him making me feel better, right? This is important stuff. This is what Jesus is for us. So the devil may accuse you, but Jesus is your advocate. All right? He's your lawyer. And he is completely powerless to condemn us because our lawyer has never lost a case. All right? Revelation chapter 12, verse 11. And let's see. Brother Kim Kyung-soo, can you read that for me, sir? 12:11. All right. Who are they? They are the brethren who have been accused. And how did they overcome the accuser? Well, the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. And we'll move on to that in a minute. But I want to stop here at the blood of the Lamb, which the Lamb is Jesus. And I want you to note what the blood does. I'm going to pass out some verses. We're going to read those, and then we'll come back to that. Brother Dew, can you take Revelation chapter 1, verse 5? Sandy, you take Revelation chapter 7, verse 14. Steve, over here, Revelation 12:11. And then Brother Benjamin, Revelation 19:13. And we'll just read those. And I want you to be paying attention as we read those to the emphasis made on the blood. Okay? All right? Go ahead.
can look and wash out from our sin in His own blood.
Okay, Revelation 5:9. I think so.
And they sung a new song, saying, Thou art worthy to take the blood and to open the seal thereof. For thou wast slain and hast redeemed us to God by thy blood out of every kindred, and tongue, and people, and nation.
All right, Revelation 7:14. Somewhere, something happened. I'm going to read that one just because I'm going to read that one, okay? Revelation 7:14, and I said unto him, Sir, thou knowest. And he said to me, These are they which came out of great tribulation, have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Revelation 12:11.
They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. They loved not their lives unto the death.
And then Revelation 19:13. Now, I try to limit us to just these verses in the book of Revelation, okay? Because we're studying the book of Revelation. But notice this. Now, the theme of the book of Revelation is not necessarily the blood of Christ. It is the revelation of Jesus Christ. But you cannot separate Christ from his sacrificial offering on the cross, okay? If you do that, you don't have a Christ. You only have another religious leader, okay? And so there is an emphasis placed on the blood here. We're cleansed by the pure blood of Christ. We've been repurchased for God himself. The blood makes us pure. No matter how dirty you may have been, you're clean by the blood. There's victory over the enemy in verse 11 through the blood. Even when the enemy is the most wicked and vile of all creatures, the devil himself, there is still victory through the blood. This is what the book of Revelation tells us again and again and again. They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb. Then it says they overcame him by the word of their testimony. There's a couple of ways of looking at it. Is it talking about the word of God? Or is it talking about the power of a life that's been consecrated to God and the message that it gives? The word of their testimony. Is it their life that's speaking? Or is it the scriptures that's speaking? But I think the thing that we should take note of is this last phrase where it says they loved not their lives unto the death. Did you catch that? This implies that these brethren died for their testimony. Wait a minute, Pastor. Wait a minute. You said that they overcame him. Do not confuse overcoming with living. Okay? Death is not a bad thing for us. It is just a doorway that we go through so that we can experience a greater joy than we've ever known before. Why do we fear it so much? Yes, sir.
Well, just to add on to that, they overcame not death, him.
Yes.
The accuser.
Right.
Death doesn't accuse us of anything. It's the wages of our sin.
So we get this concept in our heads that overcoming means suddenly life is going to become rich and rosy and wonderful, and we're going to slay the dragon, and we get these ideas of overcoming being in that way. No. Overcoming means you don't fall to the temptations, the snares of the devil. You overcome by getting victory over the things that he's throwing at you. Okay? Well, when they grab you and they say, deny Jesus or I'm cutting your head off, you don't overcome by trying to live. You overcome by not denying Jesus. You see what I'm saying? And there's people all over the world that do that. We don't do that in America. In America, they say, oh, he's a Christian. Don't promote him. And we call that persecution. Tell that to the people that are locked up in North Korea. They know what persecution's all about. So, they loved not their lives unto the death implies that they died. They may have overcome, but they were overcome. All right? Revelation 12:12. Let's see. Who wants to read that? Where are we at? We're back up here in the front. Revelation 12:12.
Revelation 12:12. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea. And for the devil is come down from unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time.
All right. So, where's all this rejoicing? In heaven. What's happening on the earth? Are they rejoicing there? Whoa. Right? So heaven rejoices. He knows that the remaining time from this point is very short. And that fits well with our understanding of the last 7 vials, which happened very close to the end. You might recall that the book of Revelation contains 3 woes. You remember the discussion of the 3 woes? Chapter 8, I think that's where we had the discussion. It said, I beheld and heard an angel fly through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth by reason of the other voices of the trumpets of the 3 angels which are not yet to sound. These 3 woes are chronological. We don't have to wonder about what the first 2 were. They were explained for us. Revelation chapter 9 verse 12 says, 1 woe is past, and behold, there come 2 woes more hereafter. So we know it's chronological. We know the first one's over. And then Revelation 11:14 it says, the second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. But we don't get a statement like that for the third woe. The third woe doesn't say, and the third woe is past, and behold, no more woe cometh. All right? We don't have that. The pattern's different for the third woe, but seeing that there is no more mention of woe after this, then this must be the third woe. It's the third mention of woe, and there's no more after that. So common sense tells you it must be it. So the world ought to be greatly distressed by the fall of Satan. Is that not true? This is what the command was. Rejoice, heavens! You people down there on earth, you better be doing some woeing. But that's not what we see. It's interesting because that's not what we find through the book of Revelation. Look at verse 12 again. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you having great wrath, because he knoweth he hath but a short time. So they ought to be distressed. But instead, when you read through the book of Revelation, what are they doing? Worshipping him. Blindly following the one who is seeking to drag them into hell with him. Don't tell me how smart we are. Okay? Because I really don't think mankind is really all that smart. Okay? There is both a spiritual aspect and a progression in intensity to the 3 woes. The first woe is the release of demonic locusts in chapter 9. And then you've got the second woe where you have the release of the 4 death angels, and that comes later in chapter 9. Then the third woe is Satan himself. So it gets worse and worse and worse. The third woe is explicitly aimed at Israel. Let me say that again. I don't want you to miss that. The third woe is explicitly aimed at Israel, and it's worse than anything they've ever experienced before. Read verse 13, Revelation 12:13.
When the dragon saw that he was cast into the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child.
So the dragon realizes where he is. He's now cast to the earth. That's where the woman is. She has already brought forth the man-child. And the woman, as we already pointed out, is who? Who's the woman? Israel. Very good. Israel's always been a target for the devil, but now his attacks will get more intense. His attacks on Israel are hate-filled. They're not emotionally motivated. The devil knows that the destruction of Israel is a matter of survival for himself, to thwart God's plan, which he cannot do. Israel's survival, therefore, results in the destruction of Satan. If A is true, then B is true. All right? When Israel finally accepts Christ as their Redeemer, and they will, the devil's plan will be thwarted. Christ will return to the earth. He will establish his millennial kingdom. Satan will be banished for 1,000 years, and then ultimately he will be cast into the lake of fire. But the key is, Israel must survive. And without God, they cannot. Right? You can't survive without God. You know, you say, what? You really think that the devil can mess up God's plan? No. Not saying that at all. I'm just saying that in the way of man looking at things, if God doesn't step in, Israel's done. But of course that can't happen. Why? Because God's promised to preserve them as a nation. Israel must survive, and Israel will survive because no matter how big or how thought out the devil's plans may be, he can never be bigger than God's plan. Now, I want you to think about this. One of my joys in life is playing chess. I haven't played in a very long time, so if you play me now, I probably wouldn't be able to beat a 6-year-old. But when my son was growing up, we would play chess, and he learned how to move the pieces. Of course, you've got to learn that first, right? You learned how to move the pieces, and so he would initially his only thinking was, how can I move? Right? The next step was learning, why should I move the pieces? So then he started learning, why should I move this piece and why should I move that piece? And he began thinking about strategy. Now, the way you win in chess is knowing what the other guy is going to do before he does it, so that you can counteract that or block that or ruin that plan or somehow. Can you imagine playing chess against God? He knows what, you speak of chess masters say that they can think 26 moves ahead. Well, God saw the end of the game before you even sat down to play. You can't beat that. The devil has no chance of messing up God's plan. Never could, never will. Revelation 12:9 emphasizes that Satan and his angels will be cast out. It's mentioned 3 times. No matter what Satan tries, God is still sovereign in the affairs of the world. The devil, as powerful as he may be, is still only a part of God's program. He's not bigger than God's program. He's only a part of it. Look in Isaiah 14, verse 24. I need a volunteer to read quickly. We're running out of time, so we got to get through this quickly. Who wants that? Isaiah 14:24. Fine, I'll read it. The Lord of hosts has sworn, saying, surely as I have thought, so shall it come to pass, and as I have purposed, so shall it stand. Now, I think just about everybody in here by now probably knows that I am not a Calvinist, and yet God is sovereign. Well, how do you make that work? I don't have to worry about it. Okay, that's not my problem. That's God's written that in His Word. He's in control. Whatever He thinks, that's going to come to pass. Man, I'm going to try that. Corvette. Doesn't work for me. You know why? I'm not God. Whatever God thinks to do, He can do it. God has made some pretty powerful promises concerning the existence of the nation of Israel. Jeremiah chapter 31, verses 35 and 36. Who wants those? Okay, right over here. Yeah, I'll take Angel. Now I've got everybody's jumping now. Yeah, I like that. Jeremiah 31, verses 35 and 36.
Jeremiah 31:35. Thus saith the Lord, who giveth the sun for a light by day, and the ordinances of the moon and of the stars for a light by night, which divideth the sea, when the waves thereof roar. The Lord of hosts is he. If these ordinances depart from before me, saith the Lord, then the seed of Israel also shall cease from being a nation before me forever.
If you believe that God's plan for Israel is over, then tomorrow morning don't expect the sun to rise for you. Don't expect for that to happen. Because according to these verses, as long as the sun rises and sets, Israel's going to be there, and God is going to keep them. He's going to preserve them. They will not cease to be a nation. This is what it says. So you would have to extinguish the sun and the stars and the moon before Israel could be destroyed. So if you think that God's done with Israel, get busy. Go ahead and get yourself a big old fire extinguisher, because you got a big old sun out there that you got to put out before that can happen, all right? Revelation chapter 12, verse 14. See, I was going to have Lane read that he ran off. So I'll get Isaac to read that. Revelation chapter 12, verse 14. While he's turning there, Sandy, you take Daniel 7, verse 4, okay? Revelation 12, 14, go.
And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, and to her place where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time from the face of the serpent.
The big question on everybody's mind is the United States the wings of the eagle, right? You asked me that last week. I said, not going to tell you, go home and study. Did you? You didn't? Well, great. Now I got to spoon feed you. The big question on everybody's mind is exactly what is meant by 2 wings of a great eagle. Now, prophecy teachers like to identify America with this symbology because the bald eagle is the national bird of America, right? Surprise, surprise. If we use that same logic, we could also identify the great eagle with Babylon. We can. Daniel 7:4.
The first was like a lion that had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made stand upon the feet of man. And a man's heart was given to it.
Well, I got bad news. Babylon's gone. Their period was 70 years and they were destroyed. Now, you could make an argument for a spiritual Babylon, but I really doubt that spiritual Babylon is going to help Israel. So that's not it. It's not America. It's Mexico. Well, you guys have eagle's wings on your flag too, right? It's Mexico. Why didn't we think of that? Yeah. No, let's use the Bible to determine what Bible means, okay? That's what we ought to do. I won't mention who I was discussing this with, but last week I said, look up the passages that talk about eagle's wings and see what they say, and then that'll help you. I think eagle's wings are mentioned 10 or 12 times in the Bible, but this is obviously figurative, so if you limit yourself to the places where it's being used figuratively, well, what do you find out? You find out Exodus chapter 19, verse 4. You have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings and brought you unto myself. God said he delivered Israel on eagle's wings. Were they literal wings? No. What's he talking about then? Quickly, fast, moving quickly. There we go. Deuteronomy chapter 32, 11 and 12. As an eagle stirreth up her nest, fluttereth over her young, spreadeth abroad her wings, taketh them, beareth them on her wings. So the Lord alone did lead him, and there was no strange God with him. Again, what's it referring to? It's referring to the power and the speed of God's deliverance. Proverbs 23, verse 5. Wilt thou set thine eyes upon that which is not? For riches certainly make themselves wings. They fly away as an eagle toward heaven. This ain't got nothing to do with Israel. It ain't got nothing to do with anything, really, except for the fact that your money goes. My mom would say that. Boy, money is burning a hole in your pocket. Right? In other words, it's going away quickly. So the idea of eagle's wings is the idea of a swift and concise deliverance. Isaiah 40:31, probably one of the most famous verses on eagle's wings. What does it say? They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. So in Revelation 12:14, the most logical interpretation is that the woman Israel will escape from the jaws of the dragon, Satan, by a swift and powerful deliverance. And it doesn't mean that the U.S. does it. It would be nice, right? If it can't be the U.S., maybe Mexico. Canada's got a leaf on their flag, so it's not them. I said that because I know it's on YouTube, and I'm going to get email. Yeah. And the funny thing is what I just told you is in complete agreement to what we studied when we were in Matthew chapter 24. Matthew 24, verses 15 through 18. Jesus said, when ye shall see the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. Neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. So Revelation 12:14 is a continuation of the thought from Revelation 12:6. So it might be good if you look at them both together. The woman flees into the wilderness. She has a place prepared of God for 1,260 days. Verse 14, the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she's nourished for a time and times and a half a time from the face of the serpent. So what's wonderful about both of these verses is that we have the confidence that God provides his power and his deliverance for his chosen ones. Length of time is the same. You remember, I'm not going to go through all of that again because we've discussed the time and times and departing of time several times. Revelation 12:15, we'll come back to that next week. If you have any questions, now's the time to ask because we're already a little bit over time and I don't want to drag this out too long. So if we don't have any questions, we'll close in prayer. You said, why should I ask a question? You never answer. All you do is say, go home and study it. Yeah, and then I find out you don't. So I'm not sure that's helpful. Maybe I'll change the way I'm doing things. I'll just go, I don't know. Then you won't think it's coming later and you will study it. Amen. Anthony, close us in prayer. Sandy.
Allow us to study it and find out, allow us to fully understand the word and to embrace it.